The FDH top 50 pro wrestlers of all time. We're going to break down our list. By the way, for anybody wondering about the Grammy-esque wardrobe change here, for those damn hipsters afterwards here, I am going to don some hipster apparel. I've already started for when Kyle pronounces me guilty of being a hipster on things. But
which will be during this list, I think.
Well,
although this list is decidedly anti-hipster.
We're going to hit I knew this was going to happen. All we're going to have time to do is hit broad strokes on this list. So what I'm going to do is we'll go through on this, the ones that jump out at the most. We'll go through here. And again, I was starting to read this prior to when Bret Hart called in. I wasn't sure when he was going to get here, but all this is drawing money, period. This is just about how successful you were, primarily as a main eventer. Some guys were able to make a huge impact as a special attraction, and they're on the list pretty high as well. But main eventing, helping to carry territories, and then later on major promotions. A tie for 50th on the list because I'm very gutless and I didn't want to leave any of these guys out, and I also didn't want to do a honorable mention. Tied for 50th. Chris Jericho, these are alphabetical. Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio Jr., George the Animal Steel, Pat O'Connor, Randy Orton, and Batista.
So it should be the top 58 then. You're just lazy. Didn't want to rank them.
Technically, it's a tie.
What that is, it's basically the token spot for the new guy who we haven't enough time to differentiate between them. And by the way, that's with one exception. George Steele has no business here.
George Steele was a heck of a special attraction. I'm not just homering for him because he's been on the show. He was a heck of a
George Steele,
as my old Summit County Fairground.
As my old
special attraction,
as the little guy who I used to know would be able to tell you, I hate George Steele.
In the 60s and 70s, he was the bomb. Come on.
I always wanted to see him as like, all I think I remember is 80s George the Animal Steel and Mine.
Once again, the little guy will tell you that feud he had with Randy Savage was so great. And
I thought it was terrible.
I hated it.
I hated it. It was awful.
To me, if there was an internet back in 1986,
like,
that feud would have been so lampooned.
End this.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you thought that was the biggest waste of Randy Savage ever.
Jericho, Mysterio, Orton, and Batista. Jericho, theoretically, they all still have time ahead of them. Batista theoretically, you don't think so? No. All right, well, Batista's
as old as it is.
I don't see Batista. Batista has, all four of those guys have hit their peak.
Yeah. Okay.
They've all...
Orton? Orton hasn't hit his... He might be in it now.
I'll tell you what, Randy Orton, here's the interesting thing with Randy Orton's career arc. His arc was 2004, and they screwed it up.
Yeah, I know.
Regardless of how he's perceived now, and that they protect him a lot better
but
now than they did back then.
But he was red hot 08, 09 going into
I thought he was overrated.
And
I've talked to you. I thought he was. I do not. I think this whole Viper thing.
Yeah, but you also got to look. It's a completely different era watching now than it was back then. The whole kid youth movement and all those people. It's all completely different. He's the watered down Stone Cold.
This is pretty much what I was afraid of. We're not going to be able to do justice to all of this.
My opinion on that one, it should be Jericho.
Yeah.
He's drawn everywhere he's gone.
49 Edge. We thought going into last night he'd have room to move up on the list. He hasn't. Let me get through the fourth tier. This is the fourth tier on us, and then we can talk about the names after that. 48 Ricky Steamboat, 47 Kevin Nash, 46 Junkyard Dog, an unmatched run in the Mid-South early 80s. 45 Sergeant Slaughter, 44 Pedro Morales, 43 Johnny Valentine, 42 Abdullah the Butcher, 41 Gorilla Monsoon, referenced earlier tonight, 40 Gene Kaniski, 39 Ray Stevens, 38 Bobo Brazil. I was questioned on Bobo Brazil by a friend of one of our dignitaries, Ken Detweiler, on Facebook. And I said, in the age of segregation, he didn't get a chance to do more than he did. He might have been the Jackie Robinson of wrestling, but didn't get a chance to carry much of a major territory.
What's interesting, I've reviewed the list in totality, that there are some guys, no one in the top three tiers, which we haven't talked about, didn't deserve to be on the list.
Okay.
So everyone there, this is the grouping, and obviously it's natural because it's the bottom tier, where there's some guys I'm like, really? And I would have to see like a gigantic list. It's just hard for me when you're looking at all these names. You're like, okay, that guy's pretty good, but there's got to be someone better. Kevin Nash, to me, didn't deserve to be on this list. I don't think. What did he do? Yeah, he was involved in one of the most famous angles ever, but
I think he
was a low-drawing WWF
champion,
and he rode the coattails of other people in WCW.
But I see him as the number 2 draw of the NWO, which was one of the biggest things ever.
Yeah, but you know what? In retrospect, I mean, Hogan was really. I mean, it even drew the interesting.
Hogan, Nash, Hall. I had it in that order.
A huge, but 2 and 3 are real close.
Okay,
and 1 and 2 are not.
Well, Hall never really main evented in WCW much. Not that Nash set the world on fire when he did.
But you're right. You're right. That's true. But there was a lot of personal problems by that point.
Okay.
I mean, I saw them as equals basically until '98. Hall and Nash. Whereas Hogan, when he came in, man, I mean, Hall and Nash were red hot when they came into the company. Hogan comes in, and I mean, the pecking order clearly
changed real quick.
Is there anybody else who you thought maybe didn't deserve to be on the list from that group?
You know, JYD, obviously, because based on the strength of Mid-South.
Unmatched
because based on the strength of Mid-South,
yeah,
he deserves to be in, because without that, he's just your standard 80s babyface that doesn't make it.
No.
I hate Pedro Morales, personally. He never did anything to me, but I just don't like it.
For 2 years, though.
Yeah,
but, New York.
You know,
I mean,
yeah, but there's another guy who's way higher on the list that was a champ for an even longer time, which I don't know to this day what he knew, what pictures he had as somebody to get those. So, you know, him and there's a lot of guys on here compared to where you go up, like I said. The big difference between Tier 3 and Tier 4 is I could probably, except Bobo Brazil, who definitely deserves to be on this list, I could probably debate anyone else being on this list.
Wow.
Eddie Guerrero, by the way, I was shocked I didn't see him on this list.
I thought about it, but he just, part of it was when he died, I thought that he just didn't get enough. Had he lived, I feel like he was on par to have been in there. And by the way, too, although he was my favorite wrestler and now a hated wrestler of mine because of everything else, Chris Benoit, I bumped for legitimate reasons. Again, cut short by his own hand, as it were, but had he and Eddie gone further, I think they'd have definitely been on the list.
They were darlings, but at the same time, they
Never
weren't really
much.
Top draws other than like the 2004.
Well, yeah,
and that was only 6 months in 2004.
Eddie headlined more than Benoit, but still, not that much.
And I know this is a draw-heavy thing,
right.
but I'm saying even if Benoit hadn't done what he done, which obviously clouds any kind of ranking. You know, Ricky, I talked about that list that was up on the blog when I talked about WrestleMania 20, that it's very hard to watch the end of that show.
Yeah, try being there.
Yeah, but I don't know if Benoit's on it, even if he didn't do what he did.
All right, third tier. I'll just go in order on these, moving our way up. 37, Jack Briscoe. 36, Danny Hodge. 35, Superstar Billy Graham. 34, Frank Gotch. 33, Terry Funk. 32, Ted DiBiase. 31, Mick Foley. 30, Ed the Strangler Lewis. 29, Dory Funk Jr. 28, Kurt Angle. 27, Bob Backlund. 26, Goldberg. 25, Sting. 24, Fred Blassie. Have at it.
All right, one of them I'm going to argue the fact Superstar Billy Graham is majorly robbed on a couple of reasons. That's way too low in my opinion. If it was Superstar Billy Graham, he drew in New York. He drew his matches up there. He was a multiple-time champion in the time era. I believe it was post Bruno.
10 or 11 months though.
Yeah, okay. He had the one reign. He beat Bruno.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then, however, he influenced so many other. I mean, I understand your main draw is
right,
but without him, you wouldn't have had Hulk Hogan. You wouldn't have had our guest from earlier tonight, Jesse Ventura. You wouldn't have had a Big Papa Pump Scott Steiner.
Criteria,
you wouldn't have had a lot of the. I mean, that's why we were talking on the phone.
Mm-hmm.
You can't have like just a flat scoreboard because I mean, what if you take Superstar Billy Graham and you put him into the Hulk Hogan spot, who I felt had 10 times more charisma than Hulk Hogan?
See,
did.
I disagree. Superstar Billy Graham, the best thing that happened in his career was that Hulk Hogan stole his shtick and did better with it, because it's like the hipster with rock and roll. who there's the popular band, and I should be able to think of an example. I was trying so hard while you were talking, and I'm drawing a blank. But there's like the popular band, and
if there's somebody that did Nirvana's shtick better,
like it's like, oh, well, you should have listened to the Pixies all the time. That's so much better. It's like, the Pixies are really good, but they're not better than Nirvana. Okay,
right.
That's what it is to me.
The Foo Fighters are, but not.
That's
the Pixies.
a great comparison.
I know it was. I made it. But Superstar Billy Graham, I thought he was accurately ranked. This was obviously a very old school tier.
Yeah.
With the exception of Angle, who, it's kind of funny because looking back 5 years ago, you're like, man, this is low, because he seemed like he was shot for the moon. And I think it just speaks to how absolutely hideous TNA is, that now it seems like he's too high.
That's sad, but I almost agree with you.
Mick Foley, I thought, was too low. And part of it's clouded. I like Mick Foley a lot. Sting and Goldberg, I'll be honest, they were really like outliers on this list because you had a lot of old school NWA champions on this list. I think both of them were too high. Goldberg is so hard to rank because, to use a sports comparison, it's like ranking that single season great team against a dynasty where it's so hard.
Yeah.
He was out of this world in '98. But other than that one run, what did he did nothing.
But in that one run, he was as hot. He was one of the hottest performers in the industry, and became a worldwide recognized celebrity, to the point where he still have gigs and people still to this day, they know who Goldberg is. However, at the same time, he was right place, right time, because he was never a good wrestler.
Yeah, but
and being the drawing criteria, he drew, but I mean, I guess near the end of it, he was. But even in that, he didn't draw on his whole entire streak. Those entire streaks weren't based entirely around him.
Right.
He had such a cast of characters that were surrounding Goldberg.
They were very deep.
People remember when he was the world champion, he was wrestling in mid-card matches as the world champion.
He was the easiest guy. I always compare Goldberg's career to that of the Ultimate Warrior. He did better than the Ultimate Warrior in that it was a no-brainer to make him the champion. They made him the champion, and he was booked so horribly, and it was also not only the promotion's fault, but a little bit of his because it's a one-dimensional character. Sting, to me, more overrated than Goldberg. Sting always seemed like a no-brainer, always failed in the top spot. Always failed in the top spot. That said, he's very popular.
We're a little behind on this. Let me just ask, have we gotten to any of the ones majorly disputed yet? I don't think so.
The only one that I think seems way underrated is Gotch. And I know that's really old school. Gotch, to me, I just actually watched the History of the World Championship TV, and Mike Campbell, that weird guy who was on a lot of these documentaries, he had Gotch in his top 5. Which is way too high. Which is way too high.
Well, there's another super old school guy. We'll hear him on the next tier. This is tier 2 of the top 50 pro wrestlers of all time. 23, Jerry the King Lawler. 22, the man he faced at SummerSlam 93. Our guest earlier tonight, the man you'll hear at the top of the hour, Bret the Hitman Hart. 21, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers. 20, John Cena. 19, Shawn Michaels. 18, Nick Bockwinkel, one of my personal favorites. 17, Triple H. 16, Harley Race. 15, Jim Londos. There's your old school. 24, Antonino Rocca. There's a little more newer old school compared to Jim Londos. 13, Macho Man Randy Savage. 12, Gorgeous George. No, not Randy Savage's valet, the original one. 11, The Undertaker. 10, Roddy Piper. And 9, Andre the Giant. That's our second tier of the top draws.
All right, this number... First things first, I would have had the first tier be smaller than you had it. I only had it. You and I, coincidentally, although it wasn't in the same order, had the same top 6.
Really?
I blindly looked. Before, when you told me you were going to do this and have me, before I even looked at your list, I wrote a quick top 10 down, and we had the same top 6. But that's where I cut the list up. To me, there was a significant drop. I think you've got a lot of the right wrestlers in this second tier. There are a lot of guys who I could argue, you should maybe be 3 spots lower, 3 spots higher when I looked at your list and started doing it. I think Bret Hart, you jobbed him, man. 22? I had him I think he's borderline top 10.
I actually don't think you jobbed him, to be honest with you.
How do I say this about somebody who was nice enough to be on the show and who's on at the top of the hour? But
internationally,
again, if I'm going by draw, and what he did on top in New York. I mean, I'm qualifying this, but again, I had him where he was at on the list, and what was it, number 19? Or 22, rather. I had him there because he is on that second tier. I think most people would agree, second tier of top draws of all time. We obviously quibble with where it would be on the second tier, but just in looking at it in dollars and cents and everything, and by the way, too, I'm not comparing it to I'm not going to compare anybody to the injustices of Bobo Brazil, because a lot of that was racially indicated, things that happened to him. But Bret Hart also suffered from bad booking. Let's not forget that. We've talked about this. They catapulted him from mid-card to world champion overnight. He lost to Yokozuna in that horrible WrestleMania 9 thing here. But this is scoreboard. You may have had a lot of things done to you, but scoreboard at the end of the day. And the guy had a stroke, which cut him short. Well, and before that, he had the bad concussion. So in the final analysis, that's where I came down.
One of the things I also had to comment on there, Jerry Lawler's ranking, thank God for Memphis, Tennessee.
Yeah.
That's in
true.
One town or one area down. I mean,
he traveled a little bit in the South and the AWA and Texas, but no, you're basically
Lawler,
right.
I mean, other than Tennessee, he never really drew outs. I mean, he wasn't a big draw when his WWE run.
Right.
Lawler didn't draw. Anyway, I think he's too high, personally.
Right. Okay.
No, I think he's right. I think he's right because you know what? You can't put, because he was no one is more popular in any one town than he is in Memphis, Tennessee. Right. But at the same, which carries him to a certain level, but there's a ceiling on that shtick. And he also, by the time he got to WWE, he was old. I mean, his best days were behind him. This is such an interesting tier because it's guys from different eras, whereas, that third tier was such old school guys. With Cena and Triple H, who I would imagine some people would actually probably have a problem with being this high. I don't. I see Bret Hart should be above John Cena because Bret Hart was back in the era when if you were the champion, you know what? It mattered. Maybe Bret, it was more sink or swim as the champion. Cena has the benefit of the company is the draw now. I don't have a problem with him being as high as he is. Same with Triple H. Triple H actually think should be a little higher.
Here's why Cena's higher on my list than Bret Hart. It seems hard to believe, and largely because only 3 of these have come in the last match at WrestleMania. John Cena is the only man ever, and granted, we're in the brand split era with 2 world titles. He's been in 7 consecutive WrestleMania world title matches. We may never see anybody do that ever again.
Big? I mean, and has John Cena?
Yeah, but on your topic of they felt that big, look at the crowd. He's got a sold-out crowd.
Yeah,
he's drawing scoreboard.
Yeah, but see, I
again,
disagree
we're going back
with
to the scoreboard.
No, that's the wrong use.
Did Bret really draw proportionally strongly? His crowd? Are you giving him credit for? I mean, I'm just asking. I'm not.
I'm saying, how many WrestleMania to me draws on the name, not John Cena?
Correct.
Okay, all right.
With Bret Hart,
correct.
You know what? WrestleMania, it was an arena show back in Bret Hart's day.
Where you're positioned going into WrestleMania says a lot, though. And John Cena,
Bret Hart
7 years in a row, has been in a world title match.
Bret was almost
always
on top.
been in a title match. He's never not been in one.
He was in a throwaway in 95. Again, bad booking.
I was talking about
in
Cena.
95.
But 9 he was on top, 10 he was on top, 12 he was on top. And 13 he
might
was
as
the
well.
real main event.
Yeah, 13 he wasn't the champion, but he was on
the
top.
real main event.
All right, well, I got to get to the top tier.
And Michaels should have been higher,
I got to get
too.
to the top. If Bret's listening, he's going to light me up at the top of the hour here after you guys set me up like that. But no disrespect, Bret. I'm just giving my honest opinion.
I'll get on his bad side by saying Shawn Michaels should have been higher. I had him at 9, 1 spot above Bret.
Oh, all right, okay. All right, well here's the top.
And Andre and Undertaker should have been higher, too.
Here's the top tier, our top 50, and these are basically on draws. Number 8, Vern Gagne in the AWA, on top pretty much forever, drawing there. Number 7, Dusty Rhodes. And then here comes the 6 we agreed on in whatever order, Kyle. Number 6, The Rock. Number 5, Bruno Sammartino. Number 4, Lou Thesz. 3, Ric Flair. Woo! Steve Austin. 2, Hulk Hogan. 1.
Okay, my question on this was The Rock.
Yeah.
Up until his comeback, The Rock, I mean, he's had such a sporadic run, and I still firmly believe that The Rock was kind of on the coattails of, he kind of jumped onto the Steve Austin bandwagon that drew him in. He kept him there, don't get me wrong. And he went on to
He was hotter than Austin for a good chunk there. I mean...
But it wasn't. He kept an audience that he didn't draw in originally. He kept them, which is good. Which I mean,
it's also why Steve Austin's higher, though.
Yeah,
so,
I understand that. It's just sometimes I think a lot of people put The Rock they glorify him more than his because he had a great run. Don't get me wrong. I just don't necessarily know that I would put him that high up.
He is like the James Dean who lived, because he's still alive.
Yeah, I know. And he's still, I guess, now, and he's still drawn again.
Yeah,
so,
he is.
I mean,
all right. First things first, and here's where the problem comes in that I spoke. Dusty Rhodes and Vern Gagne have no business being associated in the same group with the other 6 guys. Vern Gagne is the most overrated guy, I think.
Huge draw. Huge draw.
Yeah, because he was the booker.
He owned,
He was over, though. You don't run a territory like that for 20-plus years on top.
To me, when I think Vern Gagne, though, I don't think a lot of the guys we talked about
in the 50s, by the way. Go back and look at your history of the Dumont in the 50s. He was
I remember.
There. Yeah,
he was. I'm not saying he was
denying
a nobody.
that. I just don't
he
think
was a top 20 guy,
this.
but I think he should have been about 10 spots. There were a lot of guys.
Really?
Guys like Undertaker, Andre the Giant. I'd have Triple H higher than Vern
Undertaker's
Gagne.
Undertaker's an interesting one because we mentioned the strength of WrestleMania, and right now I am of the belief you mentioned the name, but the name now of WrestleMania that draws is the Undertaker. Right now it is the Undertaker that is
the number one draw
he's the
at
number
WrestleMania.
for the past at least 5 to 6 years almost. It has been the streak. That is what the main match that is sold on is the streak.
Agreed.
And right now when you're going to WrestleMania, the first thing every fan thinks of, even if they don't watch wrestling anymore, is who's the Undertaker? Is he still undefeated? Yeah.
But now,
man, I wonder who he's facing.
Now more than ever, he's a special attraction as opposed to being
Which
a guy
is also
who's there
on
year-round.
your list of,
but special
he
attraction.
evolved into a special attraction.
I always
You know
thought
what?
he was. We talked
Apples
about
to
it.
apples, dust to dust. He started his career as a special attraction and became a main eventer.
In the wake of Andre leaving. I had Andre at 7 and Undertaker at 8 on my list. Now, the top 6 I mentioned to you, I had the same.
Okay.
I actually would disagree with what he said about The Rock. I had The Rock at 3. And
I had a Flair. Okay.
Yes.
Well, if we include as like what he went on to go do, I guess.
And that kind of matters to me.
It does.
There are 3 guys.
Okay.
All right, here, 6 through 4, I had San Martino, Fez, and Flair. Those guys were great at their craft. They were great. They were the prototypical what you want as the old school NWA champion.
Right.
Drew a lot of money in their different San Martino and WWE.
When was San Martino the NWA
You know what I'm
champion?
saying? Don't you get semantics with me, pal.
I'm just saying, I missed that run.
Damn hipsters. Okay, anyway.
We got to get to that in a second. We desperately got to get to that in a second. So let's
the
wrap
thing,
here.
and here, and you know me and Hogan, but he definitely deserves to be number 1, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
I had Hogan 1, Austin 2, Rock 3. Those 3 transcended the business, did things beyond what the other 3 did.
Okay.
And here's the thing with Hogan. Whether you like that era or you don't, that era, 84 to 89, was all Hulk Hogan.
Right.
If he wasn't there, no one really cared about the show. If he was there, it was the biggest thing ever. Austin and Rock, Austin was better. Austin, because he came first, and Rock, the coattails is a little harsh, but here's the thing.
Literally.
Here's the thing. When Austin was injured for that year, the WWE did not see its business decrease. It actually kind of went up.
It actually increased
it
in
actually
2000.
increased, when The Rock was the man. So that's why, to me, the top 3 has to be Hogan, Austin, Rock, and then I go with the 3, Flair, Fez, San Martino.
All right.